musical instrument. You can see this at MTA.me. The idea was to turn it into a string plucked instrument. One of the things that I think might be interesting on learning interfaces, I think simple interfaces are the timeless ones. Like, so here I was trying to combine just a really timeless drawing interface, kind of like Harold and Purple Crayon, and turning these things into plucked instruments to kind of teach adults and kids about string length and the physics of strings, but also just as a fun musical interface that I could play with. For work, this is a nerdy slide. For work, I actually, that project led into the Les Paul Doodle, which was an idea that I came up with that was on Google.com. So I'm just going to do the bullet points that I think actually are important for here, which is that I think people were sharing songs on this thing, but we were really surprised with how, so overseas we couldn't let people record and share songs that way, but basically when we launched it overseas, we saw tweets like this coming out, where people were literally sharing songs through the Les Paul Doodle using keystrokes. And one of the interesting things I thought about this was that, you know, folk music, before we had recorded music, they literally ran around the world and taught songs to each other, and that's kind of how they transmitted themselves around the world. So this was actually closer to that. They were circumventing the recording thing by literally teaching each other music the old-fashioned way. And one of the interesting things, I always try to, every time, you know, a young person asks me about the Les Paul Doodle, I always try to show them the nuts and bolts behind it, which is that the entire, when you share a song, the entire song is actually encoded here, and all the machine was doing was passing along the instructions that you encoded it with and performing those instructions for the next person. And, you know, on a personal level, I sort of echo a lot of the stuff Nate was talking about with, I think, like, computer programming should be sort of it should almost, not that everybody's going to go into computer programming, but I think there's a lot of, like I've been reading like Sherry Turkle's books about how kids are responding to machines, and that showing a little bit of the nuts and bolts behind why an iPhone responds to the touches and why a Furby seems emotional is actually really important for how they will grow up and spend the rest of their lives relating to machines. So I think even just planting the seed for an interest in computer programming is really important. And I'm sure you guys know way more about this stuff than I do. The other thing from the book that I've been reading by Sherry Turkle, which I think might just plant the seed for discussions, is just that even though we can be connected in the classroom to everybody else in the world, she makes a really strong argument for intimacy and for small group environments, and that there are times when it will be hugely beneficial to focus on that small group, that you are the only people in the world that matter right now, and so I think that could be an interesting one. So if you want to know more about my personal stuff, just come find me, but I rounded up links that I think could spark some conversations today. So I was asked to talk about visualization stuff, and so some examples I've seen that were really, I thought, simple and powerful. This is a site called howbigreally.com, and even as adults, I hate when news organizations will just spew out numbers that mean nothing to us, that are like, oh, the oil spill covers this many square miles of, and we have no idea how many square miles. So they, this company Berg and BBC and probably other people put things, so you put in yours, it's up in my hometown, and it literally maps it over your, so here's the 2010 Pakistan floods over my hometown in New Jersey. So it really gives you a sense of how big really this stuff is. So it's an incredible, simple, not fancy technology way of just helping adults and kids relate to this. So there's amazing things here. And I think, you know, just the power of the visual, I think, is what, and the relatable, I think, is what's the takeaway there. A spin-off which just launched yesterday, or I just saw for the first time yesterday, maybe just launched recently. This one, I think, is even more powerful. Let me see if I can log it quickly, but they, how many really, is an important one. So it connected to my Facebook account, and it is now, so things like when you say, this is how many people died at the Battle of Gettysburg. Okay, so actually I'm not sure what it's about to show, so this will be interesting. These are my 398 friends. You can actually roll over them. This is how many these 2 million. And I actually had an idea that I wanted to throw out there for making a portable infographic platform just like this before I saw this launch. I don't care who makes it, so I'm just glad that it's out there. But you'll see this one's actually more powerful because it'll, so this is amazing. What would happen if your friends were there? And you'll continue, you can actually roll over and see your friends in here. If your 398 friends made up armies like Edinburgh, these 287 people survived. Wow. These 65 were wounded. These 27 were captured and missing. And it's just, you get emotional looking at this thing, and I think it's just a simple example of how APIs, he was captured. Simple APIs, like it's nothing fancy, but so I think emotion is what makes this thing powerful. It's the faces, like it's that, the number I think would have already been a great project. It's like this is how many Facebook friends you have, but the fact that you have your friends' faces here, I think makes this a powerful. Similarly, in information graphics, I saw this one, and I wish I had seen it when the financial crisis was actually happening. But during that time, they're spewing numbers left and right. But just the simple graphic of seeing this stuff just is so powerful. And people are making these things manually right now, and there's not really a great tool for it. So as far as I know, but it's a really amazing graphic. And I think if you ever go to talks by Andrew Tufte, he's all about print resolution. So I would say, if you can print this out, you get the resolution of something like 50 computer screens. Like the dots on the piece of paper are still incredibly high resolution. So that's the other lesson I've learned recently, is just don't underestimate the high resolution of print. But simple infographics like this, I think this was the $1 billion program. This bottom graphic's a little debatable, the worldwide cost of financial crisis. But even this top one, you have NASA is this little blue square, their budget. BP revenue is this one. The cost of the eventual Iraq and Afghanistan processing. So the power of infographics. And it could be simple ones. So you don't need to be some Illustrator wizard. I think this guy, he literally saw a simple stat that said that 20 billion hours a year are spent watching TV by US adults, and 100 million hours are used to create all of Wikipedia. So I think seeing these blue squares, those were just 2 lines that he saw in a news article, and you're like, oh, okay, that seems like a lot. But then when you see these squares, it's depressing and inspirational. And then I might have gone too fast. Jump in with any questions or comments at any point, because then I want this to be useful more than anything. So the other thing, I'm sure all of you guys have seen this, but I just came across it, recently, and I just think this is one of my favorites. That she does is just that visualization doesn't have to be high tech, and she just has a series of doodling in math class. But she's teaching pretty serious mathematical concepts and this stuff. We're just going to play the fast forward version so you guys will get this. But she's teaching about binary trees here, but literally the importance of doodling. And this is stuff that I remembered playing with as a kid of I know there's some system going on here when I draw these shapes, and when I draw, Superman's home on Krypton, the stars that come out there. And I think the other lesson here is just, low technology. It still has a hugely rewarding feel to it, and it's just incredible with what she's teaching here. And she's a whole series of these that I just thought were really inspirational. Some about factorials using star drawings, and you'll see that she tricks you into teaching pretty dense mathematical concepts just through very low technology. Is there anything you guys want me to dive into more, or more examples of something, or comments?
Andy Dillard wrote this interesting article about how people just stop caring about numbers. 100,000 people died here, and that's directly addressing those.
Yeah.
I think that gets pretty good.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to say that there's an Edward Tipton Or gallery is very close.
That's the tough thing.
Yeah, it is a gallery.
Yeah.
I have two unrelated kind of comments. One is something that seems very interesting about this is kind of in the context of themes and like, as we started to create technology, we really thought about scale, and then it's almost like scale got, if you say scary or something, where it just became meaningless. It's nice to see a usage of APIs as a tool for getting scale back.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's a really good way to think about it. And my questions are just about kind of your instruments. How much do you balance in making these, what I'm doing is balance the nodes and anodes and balance the string physics with it being easy to pick up, with it being an instrument that also has some usage, that people can compose songs that Les Paul sketch that were good, and people compose songs that were bad, and so you had to have.
I think I'll skew way more towards having more people pick things up. We limit stuff that musicians sort of scoffed at, like it's all on a major scale and all sounds pretty, but then it sort of invites people to play with it more. With the Les Paul doodle, the thing that I was excited about was that there's a physics teacher after it came out that posted this thing where he analyzed how accurate we were with the string physics there.
Cool.
And I love this. I got into a little debate with him, or discussion in the comment section. But basically, the result was we were pretty accurate, where like strings, higher tones oscillate more tensely and with more tautness and at higher frequency than the lower ones. But then we also took a lot of liberties with the aesthetics to make it approachable and nice and bendy, so that kids, adults, anyone could feel like they were pulling the thing and kind of throw a couple of the physical qualities aside.
I have two questions. One is about the comment section. How do you see different variations of presenting commentary for education purposes and dialogue? And the other is if you have a chance to talk more about what is appropriate to have in the DTC to disconnect other things.
I don't know if I have an answer to either of those. they're big thoughts that I think are just the Sherry Turkle book I've been reading is this thick, and it's about just this dude. She's responding to like Facebook and the network of everything and how you feel less connected to each individual person. I guess the other thing that comes to mind that might help answer it, I think they did a study about the turning point of Twitter interactions, and that I think it was around 100 or so friends that up to that point, people were having quality back and forth at conversation, but there was a sharp decline after that. And I think then there was a guy who had studied the brains of primates and arrived at a similar number that he would have predicted years ago, that was about the number of friends that our brains, so he compared brain size of how many people they can keep in their social circle, and then extrapolated it to humans, and it was around the same number. So that might give us an estimate, but I don't know, I guess off the top of my head it seems like different case scenarios. Comments are an interesting one, because on the one hand, the idea of a worldwide discussion that anybody can jump in is really important, but I think there's also, at Google, we're always talking about at lunch about why people are so much meaner online behind the wall of anonymity than they are, that they would never say in person. And so I think public comments sort of open this floodgate of the cyberbullying and the act of a crowd. I think there's a lot of psychologists, I read an article, are trying to link anonymity on the internet to mob behavior. And so I think comments and public comments sort of open the gates to that kind of thing. So maybe there's an in-between where it's like it's not the whole world, but it's like a select group.
I have a quick question. I don't know how relevant it is. Well, there was a mention before about games, and this understanding that when you look at games, like we don't want people to play games where you shoot the right answer, right? We're seeing that as a game mechanic that doesn't work. So I'm wondering, in your exploration of visualizations and mashups and use of API, are there like pitfalls or common themes that you see that mirror that, like misuse of data visualization, like maybe?
I don't some data visualization that has a clear agenda, and it's the equivalent of making a video for something, like the powers of 10 video or something, or the millions of hours spent watching TV. But then that one has a very clear point, and it's just giving you a visual to drive a point home. But then other ones, I think, are like the $1 billion grant, are meant for you to explore and draw your own conclusions. I definitely kind of, like I was happy to hear the logo. Nate was talking about logo, which was my first exposure to computer programming. That I think there's games and then there's creation tools, and I definitely enjoy thinking about creation tools where you're building something together, not necessarily ending up with winners and losers. But,
Thanks.
So hello everyone, I'm Agnes. I work at the New York Times R&D Lab, and I'll be showing you guys some of the stuff that we're looking at there and sort of some of the questions that we're thinking about. I'll try to go through this fast because I know we're running behind and you can see the questions after. So one of the things I want to start off with is sort of thinking about what is information technology and the history of that information technology. If we really look at it, like writing is sort of the oldest information technology, and then back in the day, writing was a difficult thing to do. You had to carve it in stone. Not everybody had literacy, and so it was like in these rare occasions, such as in a public square, or you would have it, in the Bible for important things like that. But these days, writing is, ubiquitous. You see it everywhere. It's almost so much that there's like advertisement spam that we don't want to see anymore. And we have it in all our environment everywhere. But if we think about writing versus sort of digital technology today, our digital technology is still very much sort of in this computer box. As many of you have mentioned, we're still in this monitor versus mouse paradigm. And so what we could think about is sort of what tools can we design, what are technologies that we can build to make digital technology sort of more like writing and writing literacy, computational literacy in the way it is today. So at the New York Times, we're a publisher. We generate lots and lots of content. And so some of the questions that we look at in the research lab is sort of, okay, so we have newspapers as a sort of platform on which we distribute content. These days, we also have digital content. And so what is the next platform and content distribution tools that we might have in the future? So one of the first things that we have here is imagining that in the future we'll have multi-touch surfaces more ubiquitously in people's common homes, such as at a coffee table. And so here's rethinking the newspaper layout for the homes. Like, when you're holding up a newspaper yourself, it's a very solitary activity, but if you're doing that at a coffee table, it probably makes more sense for this to be an interactive, multi-touch experience with the people who are also around the table. So you notice you can read it upside down and turn it around, just pull out some articles, and that way you can pull them out under a little bit. There you go. Then you want to take over the table versus you can share it with your friend. Photos become sort of digital objects on the surface, right? You can take them out and enlarge them, and then close the article and still have the photos around to sort of have that tactileness of tossing the media. And the next thing is sort of also thinking about how to share this with people who might be going in and out of your house, like say, you're living with family, but they're not home right now, but you might want to share an article with them later. And so you could perhaps do commentary on the side, like you would be able to do with pen and pencil on your actual physical newspaper, to be able to jot that down and share it with that was not me. And so that's sort of one of the things we're working on for platforms of the media future. And the other thing we think about is also sort of platforms that are
in order to explore the different ways that information can be embedded into our daily routines. So you get up in the morning, brush your teeth, comb your hair, but you also have what we like to call your information routine. So for example, Mirror, show me the weather. So here I can get basic readout and see what the forecast is for the day. One thing the mirror can also do though is show me what it looks like outside. So this takes an image every minute or so from a camera across the lab. And you notice they use gesture to pull this image up. We use a Microsoft Connect embedded into the side of the mirror to do that. Mirror, show the headlines. So you're probably not going to read an entire New York Times article in the morning on your mirror, but you can look at the headlines as they scroll down below. And if there's something you like, you touch your phone to it, and you can take it on the subway. And you're supposed to brush your teeth for 2.5 minutes. And that's a good length of time for a piece of Times video content. Mirror, show my health. There's a lot of interesting sensors coming out on the market. For instance, the Fitbit, which measures how much you move throughout the day. So we're looking at my average week in terms of how much I move over the last several months. Monday through Friday, that bright bar is my morning commute. I typically bike to work. Now, content plays into this by adding an interpretive layer on this data. So we know from my schedule that I'm doing a lot of sitting during work hours. And in our archive, we published an article that has to do with that very thing. And we can actually use the behavior to key into our database and pull up this content. You know, prescription medication, there's a fair amount of information behind this that's not necessarily present. So when I put it on the mirror shelf, thanks to an RFID reader, I can look at information that's personalized and streamlined to what I need to know right now, which is, you know, how many days left are my prescription, when my next appointment is, etc.
So that's some of our thinking about sort of how to blend information routines in with our physical daily routines that we go through today. The next thing I want to show is an external project called Symbios. Some of you might have seen these before, but I think this is a very good example of sort of breaking information out of the computer terminal. But these are little cubes that are motion sensitive and they're sensitive to each other, and so you can imagine all of these sorts of interactive content that can be moved. I think this is really great. I can stack them, right? Play with them in all sorts of different physical ways that we naturally can really get your hands into. So let's start at stage right now, but you can buy it. So look back to the New York Times content. One of the other things we're looking at is sort of thinking beyond just immediate information. So we have all of this content distributed. People have it in their hands, but this is like not actually an entire picture, even though these are the contents we have now, because there's all of this conversation that people have regarding the content. They share the content, they're reacting to this content, and digital technology really allows us to sort of get an insight into this sort of meta layer of information that we previously didn't have. Like previously, we only had letters to the editor type of feedback and interaction between the publisher and the readers. But now we have all different sorts of ways, and so we're interested in looking at the relationship between how people interact around content. So this is
Every day, thousands of links to New York Times articles are posted on Twitter. Some of these are retweets and messages our writers and editors have posted, and others are self-initiated. Some mention just the headline and link, but many offer a short explanation or opinion on the article mentioned. This tool illustrates the connection between readers and publishers, helps identify influential contributors to the conversation, and clearly displays the life cycle of a news-sharing conversation in an intuitive way. To help get a better understanding of the complex data, the tool provides multiple views. We can view a cascaded whole to understand its depth and breadth. And we can zoom in to important events in the cascade to see complex cascades can also be pruned to show only those key nodes, revealing the backbone of the conversation. One piece of content may have several different cascade structures, since each cascade is born from a single event. Stories with a lot of sharing activity can result in large, complex cascades. We hope to use this tool to help the New York Times investigate several questions. What is the impact of a single tweet? How much of a conversation occurs in just 120 characters? Are certain people more influential on certain topics? Does the content of the tweet affect its impact on the conversation, and if so, how? What variables, such as time of day or day of week, affect the impact of the tweet? And perhaps most importantly, how can the Times use this information to expand its impact in the conversation, to maintain its position as a news and information leader in this complex environment?
So next, I wanted to share with you guys a couple of my own projects, but it's sort of the same idea of how digital technology sort of allows us to rethink what information is. Information is no longer this static sort of set chunk, but it sort of develops a life of its own once people can interact with it. It can change. Technology allows us to sort of take the affordances of that dynamicness. So one of my projects, we were thinking about signage and traditional signage. This is information in your environment. This is locations of where the buildings are. If you go into a new building, you want to find out, say, there's a lecture in number 232, and you want to find out where it is. But the problem is this is, if you really think about it, we've always had this kind of signage, but when you go into a building and you're looking for a lecture, you're looking for the people there and the lecture there rather than necessary room number 232, unless you're an architect and you're interested in the building and the windows in that room or something like that. So we tried to think about ways that we could change signage to be sort of not about static information, but about where things that people were interested in. And so this was a conceptual project sort of looking at how, if you could imagine, you could track people going to a building, you would have information about where people went most frequently, at which turning point, where they might be looking for what types of information. They can approach the sign, and it will show them as you're walking through the hallways, it will recognize which user is which user, and from there, sort of give you a guided system. And the key information, and one of the key points here is that this would be sort of like a participatory signage where people could put in information about, local users could tell you information about what was the best way to get to some place. If a certain room was under construction or something, you would be able to immediately input that information. So this part was sort of inspired by handwritten signs, the kind where people just like tape in the subway, this train is not running for today, that type of thing. And again, sort of rethinking about what it means for map information, where what you're looking for is not necessarily physical location sometimes, though it is in certain cases, but other times you're looking for the people, the events that are time-based. And of course, you can imagine, if you have a special event, like a Christmas party, you can have all your signage sort of for that moment change into something dynamic. And then lastly, I wanted to show a project about sort of imagining technology, sort of taking it to the extreme. What if we could put displays everywhere, we had sensors everywhere, could sense anything? What types of products might make sense? And so we were thinking about, if technology, if you had sensors everywhere, by that point, technologies could do a lot of things for you, but that people would still want to make things for themselves, and they would still want to learn new hobbies, as we always have. Like, we can always, easily go out and buy a cake, but a lot of us still really like making cakes ourselves. And so this was sort of some concepts about how, in the future, people could use information to help themselves. So this is an idea of having smart gloves. And so once the gloves, you can imagine the gloves can do sensor tracking, so know exactly the motions that you're doing, and it could save those through gestures. And it could tell you the difference between the ones that you did before and the ones that you might want to achieve. So you can teach it the night changing part was part of the idea that there's programmable, possibly programmable matter in the future where physical atoms could change shape as well. So that's the end of my presentation. There's a hodgepodge of stuff, but really it's a lot of what we're looking at is sort of how to bring information into our natural environment in sort of on human terms, on the way we're used to dealing with different things in our environment and the way we're used to dealing with new information, and having sort of designing digital tools based on observations of the way we work as well as the way we currently work